The smell of lilies is suffocating. It's that cloying, sweet scent of death hidden under a layer of expensive perfume and floor wax. I'm standing in the middle of my father's wake, watching a sea of people in black suits weep over a man they called a pillar of the community. They talk about Judge Miller's unshakable integrity. They talk about the lives he saved. But I'm looking at the man in the third row, the one with the scarred hands and the hollow eyes, and I realize my father didn't just uphold the law, he manipulated it like a weapon. I'm holding a letter I found in his safe an hour ago, a letter that proves the man sitting 10 feet away from me spent 20 years in prison for a crime my own mother committed. My father didn't protect the law. He protected us by destroying an innocent life, and now, as the dirt waits for his casket, I have to decide if I'm going to let that man's life stay buried with him. The wake was held at the Miller estate, the massive colonial house that had been in our family for 3 generations. It was a house built on high ceilings and deep secrets. I looked at my mother, Diane. She was the picture of the grieving widow, draped in silk, her eyes perfectly rimmed with just enough tears to look fragile but not messy. She was the first lady of this county. Everyone loved the judge and his elegant wife. I feel a cold sweat prickling at my hairline. My hand is deep in my coat pocket, fingers trembling against the rough edge of the envelope I stole from my father's private study. I shouldn't have looked. I was supposed to be getting the funeral programs, but the drawer was slightly ajar. It was like the wood itself was tired of holding the weight of what was inside. Why did he keep it? That's the thought that keeps looping in my head. Was it a trophy? Or was it his only form of confession? Maybe, after 40 years on the bench, even a man as cold as my father needed to leave a trail of crumbs leading back to the truth, even if he intended for them to be found only when he was safely underground. I remember the night it happened clearly now, though for 20 years I'd suppressed the details. I was 7. I remember the sound first, a wet, metallic crunch, the sound of glass screaming against asphalt. Then the silence of the driveway. My mother had come home with a look in her eyes I'd never seen before, wide, dilated, and vacant. She was shaking so hard the keys rattled in the door like a warning bell. My father took her into the study, closed the door, and told me to go back to sleep. He said it was just a deer. The next morning, the local news was full of a hit and run. A young woman, a nursing student named Sarah, was gone. A week later, Elias Vance, the man in the third row, was arrested. My father didn't preside over the case, of course, that would be a conflict of interest, but his investigative leads and his anonymous tips to the police are what put the handcuffs on Elias. I look at Elias now. He was released 2 months ago on a technicality, but his life is a ghost. He lost his youth, his reputation, and his family. He's here at the funeral of the man who ruined him, and he doesn't even know it. He probably thinks he's paying respects to the fair judge who eventually allowed his case to be reopened. The hypocrisy makes me want to scream. Every "God bless you" whispered to my mother feels like a slap. I watch her accept a bouquet of white roses. She looks so dignified. She looks so innocent. I wonder how many times she sat across the dinner table from me, cutting her steak and asking about my school day, knowing that a man was rotting in a cell because she couldn't keep her eyes on the road. I catch my mother's eye. She smiles at me, a small, encouraging tilt of the head. She thinks I'm just grieving. She thinks I'm the proud daughter of a hero. She has no idea that I'm currently holding the evidence that could put her in a prison cell for the rest of her life. I feel a wave of nausea. I've lived my whole life believing we were the good people. We were the ones who followed the rules. We were the ones who sat in the front pew. What is a legacy worth if it's built on a graveyard? I realized then that my entire life, my private school education, my law degree, the very clothes I'm wearing to this funeral, was paid for with the currency of silence. Every meal we ate was a meal stolen from Elias Vance. Every laugh we shared in this house was a mockery of the justice my father swore to uphold. The house is finally empty. The last of the mourners left an hour ago, leaving behind half-eaten casseroles, empty wine bottles, and the lingering scent of damp wool and expensive cologne. My mother is in the kitchen, her movements fluid and practiced as she pours 2 glasses of heavy red wine. She looks relieved. The performance is over. The widow can finally relax. He would have been so proud of you today, Elena, she says, handing me a glass. Her voice is steady, like a calm lake with no ripples. The way you handled the guests, you have his poise. I don't take the glass. I can't. My hands feel like they're made of lead. I pull the envelope out and lay it on the marble island. The white paper looks like a surgical wound against the dark, expensive stone. I found this in Dad's desk, Mom. I wasn't looking for it, but it was there. It's a signed statement from the mechanic in Oakhaven, the one who fixed the front end of your car in November of 1996, the one Dad paid $50,000 to disappear. The silence that follows isn't empty. It's heavy. It's the sound of a foundation cracking under the weight of a house that was never meant to stand. My mother doesn't flinch. She doesn't gasp. She doesn't drop her wine glass. She just sets it down on the counter, very slowly, with the precision of a woman who has spent decades hiding her heartbeat. "You shouldn't have gone in his desk, Elena," she says. Her voice hasn't changed. That's what terrifies me. No denial, no "what are you talking about?" Just a cold, tactical observation. It's the voice of a judge's wife who knows exactly how the system works. "Elias Vance was in there today, Elena," I whisper, my voice cracking. I feel like a child again, small and helpless. "He sat there and watched you cry for the man who stole 20 years of his life. How do you live with that? How did Dad look himself in the mirror every morning? He sent people to prison for less than what you did. We lived with it because we love you, Elena, because we were a family. If I had gone to jail, who would have raised you? Your father knew that a man like Elias, he was already struggling. He had a record. He was a sacrifice for this family's survival. It was a moral trade. Your father did what was necessary to protect the nest." A moral trade. She says it like she's talking about switching brands of detergent or choosing a different color of paint for the guest room. She's not a monster in a movie. She's my mother, and she's justifying the destruction of a human soul to keep her own life comfortable. She's suggesting that my childhood was worth more than a man's entire existence. "It wasn't a trade, Mom. It was a theft," I said, stepping back from her. "You stole his life. You stole that girl's justice. And Dad, he spent his life pretending to be the hand of God while he was playing the devil." Her eyes harden. The warmth drops away, and for the first time, I see the woman who could drive away from a dying girl and never look back. "And what do you think happens now, Elena? You're a lawyer, you know the law. If that paper leaves this house, everything we have is gone. This house, your career, your father's name, everything. You'll be the daughter of a murderer and a corrupt judge. Is that the life you want?" I look around the kitchen. I see the high-end appliances, the custom cabinetry, the photos of us on the wall. It's a beautiful life. It's a perfect life. And it's a lie. "I don't want a life that belongs to someone else," I say. I take the envelope and walk out of the kitchen. She doesn't follow me. She just stands there in the dark, her wine glass untouched, a silhouette of a woman who stopped feeling guilt a long time ago. I didn't sleep. I spent the night pacing my childhood bedroom, surrounded by the trophies and photos that my father's sacrifice bought me. Every graduation photo where I'm smiling next to him, every vacation to the coast where we laughed on the beach. It's all tainted. I look at my law degree hanging on the wall. Juris Doctor, teacher of the law. The irony is so sharp it feels physical. I realized then that the betrayal wasn't just against Elias. It was against me. They raised me to believe in justice. They spent thousands of dollars to ensure I understood the sanctity of the courtroom. They told me that the truth is the only thing that matters, while they built a kingdom out of lies. They didn't just protect me. They groomed me to be the face of their respectability. I was the final piece of their cover-up, the successful, honest daughter who proved they were good people. At 4 a.m., I drove to the motel where I knew Elias was staying. I'd looked it up in the court records. It's a place on the edge of town, a place that smells of stale cigarettes and despair, the kind of place you end up when the world has decided you don't matter. It's 3 miles from the courthouse where my father's portrait hangs in the lobby. I sat in my car for 2 hours, watching the neon sign flicker. Vacany, like a heartbeat. My hand was on the door handle, but I couldn't move. I kept thinking about my mother's face. I kept thinking about what happens to a woman in her 70s in a state penitentiary. I thought about the headlines, Miller Legacy in Ruins. If I give him this letter, I lose everything. I lose the only family I have left. I lose the financial security I've never had to worry about. I'd be the woman who destroyed the Miller name. I'd be an outcast in the only town I've ever called home. But then I think of the funeral. I think of the priest talking about walking in the light. I think about the girl, Sarah, who never got to grow up, never got to go to law school, never got to have a mother who tucked her in at night. Her parents died years ago, never knowing the truth. I felt a strange, cold clarity. I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like a janitor finally starting a job that should have been done 20 years ago. I walked up to room 12. The air was crisp and smelled of coming rain. My heart was a drum in my ears, a frantic, rhythmic pounding. I knocked. It took a long time for the door to open. When Elias finally appeared, he looked like a man who had been woken up from a dream he didn't want to leave. He was wearing a threadbare undershirt, his hair messy, his eyes squinting against the dim morning light. He looked at me, and I saw the recognition click. He'd seen me at the funeral. He'd seen me in the newspapers for years, the judge's daughter. "I'm Elena Miller," I said. My voice sounded small in the empty parking lot. He didn't move. He didn't invite me in. He just leaned against the doorframe, his scarred hands gripping the wood. "I know who you are. Come to tell me more about how great your father was? Come to give me a charity check to make yourself feel better?" "No," I said. I pulled the envelope from my coat. "I came to tell you that you were right. About everything. About the car, about the night it happened, about who was driving." I handed him the envelope. He didn't take it at first. He looked at it like it was a snake. When he finally grabbed it, his fingers brushed mine, and they were rough, calloused, and shaking. I watched him read it. I watched his eyes move across the mechanic's confession. I watched the way his shoulder slumped, not in relief, but in a kind of profound exhaustion. I expected him to scream. I expected him to cry or lunge at me in rage, but he just sat down on the edge of the stained motel bed and exhaled a breath he'd been holding for 2 decades. 20 years, he whispered. I told them. I told the police. I told the lawyers. I told the jury. No one listened because I was a nobody, and he was the judge. "I'm sorry," I said. The words felt pathetic. They felt like a drop of water in an ocean of pain. He looked at me, and there was no forgiveness in his eyes, just a cold, hard truth. "You're sorry it doesn't give me my 30s back, girl. It doesn't bring back my mother who died while I was in the hole. It doesn't fix my hands." He held them up, the knuckles swollen from years of prison labor. "But at least I'm not the crazy one anymore." I turned to leave, but he stopped me. "Why? Why now? He's dead. You could have just burned that." I looked back at the flickering neon sign. Because I'm a Miller, and for once, I wanted that to mean something good. The fallout wasn't like the movies. There were no dramatic courtroom speeches with swelling music. It was a series of quiet, devastating meetings in windowless rooms with a district attorney and the state police. It was hours of depositions where I had to recount my father's study, the smell of the safe, and the coldness in my mother's voice. My mother didn't fight it. Once she knew I'd given the letter to Elias, the fight seemed to drain out of her. She didn't hire a high-powered defense team. She just sat in her silk chair and waited for the police to arrive. The last time I saw her before the indictment, she looked at me with a profound kind of disappointment. It wasn't because of the lives she had ruined. It was because I had broken the code. To her, the ultimate sin wasn't hit and run or framing an innocent man. It was betraying the bloodline. The town changed overnight. The Judge Miller Memorial Library had his name scraped off the stone within a week. The bronze statue in the square was covered in a tarp. People I'd known my whole life, people who had hugged me at the funeral, stopped calling. They stopped looking me in the eye when I passed them on the street. It's funny how people react when a local hero falls. They don't just blame the hero, they blame the person who showed them the truth. They liked the lie. The lie was comfortable. I lost my job at the firm. Vested interests, they called it. But we all knew the truth. No one wanted a miller in their office, even the good one. I sold the estate to pay for the legal fees and the restitution to Elias. It wasn't enough, but it was everything I had. I'm sitting on a park bench now, 6 months later. I'm in a city 3 hours away, a place where no one knows my name or my father's face. I'm working as a public defender, representing people like Elias, the ones the system tries to grind into the dirt. I have a small apartment with a leaky faucet and a car that makes a rhythmic, grinding noise when I turn left. I have nothing left of the Miller legacy except my own name, which I'm thinking of changing to my grandmother's maiden name. Elias called me last week. It was the first time we'd spoken since that morning at the motel. He didn't say thank you. He didn't tell me he'd forgiven my family. He's not a character in a fable. He's a man who had 20 years stolen from him, and that kind of wound never truly heals. But he told me he'd bought a small house with a garden. "I'm planting tomatoes," he said, his voice gravelly and slow. "I just wanted you to know that for the first time in 20 years, I don't wake up feeling like I'm suffocating. The air tastes different when people know you aren't a killer." I hung up and cried for an hour. I didn't cry for my father, and I didn't cry for my mother. I cried because the truth is a heavy, ugly, and demanding thing. It doesn't always make you feel better. It doesn't bring back the dead or restore the years. It doesn't give you a happily ever after. It just makes you clean. My father's grave is overgrown now. The grass has reclaimed the plot and the headstone is stained with bird droppings. I don't visit. I don't need to. I realize that the only way to truly honor the law, the thing my father pretended to love, is to accept that sometimes the people we love are the villains in someone else's story. I'm no longer the daughter of a hero. I'm just Elena. And as I walk toward the courthouse today to represent a man the world has forgotten, I realize that the moral trade my father made was a lie. You can't protect a nest by burning down someone else's home. You can only protect the truth by living it, no matter how much it costs you. The sun is setting over the city, casting long shadows across the pavement. For the first time in my life, I'm not afraid of what's hiding in the dark. I know exactly who I am, and I know exactly what I've lost. But as I step into the light of the courtroom, I know that I'm finally walking on solid ground.